This is one of the darkest truths about modern history. For America, war has never been only about survival, justice, or freedom. It's also about money. Every conflict became more than just a battlefield of weapons and soldiers. It became a stage for financial opportunity. While ordinary people sent their sons to die and families tightened their belts, the machinery of finance quietly turned bloodshed into profit. America didn't just fight wars, it learned to monetize them, turning tragedy into a business model that shaped the global financial system we live under today. To really understand this, we have to step back to the First World War, the so-called Great War that erupted in 1914. At first, the United States wasn't directly involved. Europe was bleeding itself dry. Britain, France, Germany, Austria-Hungary, all caught in a conflict that devoured men and money at an unimaginable pace. Millions of soldiers marched, artillery shells rained down by the tens of millions, and bills stacked higher than any government treasury could handle. And that's when America saw its first opportunity. Across the Atlantic, American industry and banks stepped in as the arsenal and lender of democracy. Wall Street houses like J.P. Morgan made unprecedented deals with the British and French governments. Morgan alone arranged billions of dollars in loans and acted as a purchasing agent, funneling American wheat, steel, coal, and munitions across the ocean. To put it in perspective, billions in the 1910s meant sums so large they dwarfed the federal budget itself. And all of it came with interest. Every shell that exploded on the Western Front carried not just TNT, but debt obligations to American financiers. The United States officially entered the war in 1917, but by then its financial system was already tied to the outcome. If Britain and France lost, Wall Street lost too. The line between national security and financial interest had already blurred. Ordinary Americans were told it was their patriotic duty to buy Liberty bonds, debt instruments marketed with emotional propaganda, urging citizens to lend their savings to the government. Posters showed Uncle Sam pointing his finger. "I want you." Celebrities paraded through cities encouraging bond purchases. Even kids collected coins for thrift stamps that could turn into bonds. For the first time in history, an entire nation was financially mobilized to fight a war. But here's the darker reality. While small savers lent a few dollars, the real winners were the bankers and industrialists sitting at the top. Factories boomed, profits soared. J.P. Morgan's influence over governments grew beyond anything seen before, and a new precedent was set. War could be financed not just by gold or taxes, but by debt sold to the public and backed by private finance. That mechanism has never gone away. Fast forward to the Second World War, and the same model was perfected on an even greater scale. Europe fell into chaos again, and once more American industry surged to fill the gap. Roosevelt declared America would be the arsenal of democracy. By the time the United States entered the war in December 1941, factories were already running full tilt, producing ships, planes, tanks, and munitions at a scale the world had never seen. But here's what really matters. The financing machine was also in full motion. The Treasury issued war bonds and the Federal Reserve backed them. Ordinary citizens were once again told to invest their savings as an act of patriotism. Over 85 million Americans bought war bonds, raising more than $185 billion. To grasp that number, it represented well over half the total cost of the war. The financial system had learned the formula: package sacrifice as investment, and turn citizens into lenders of last resort. Meanwhile, corporations like Boeing, General Motors, and Ford switched from civilian production to military contracts that guaranteed profits, often regardless of efficiency. The government fronted the money. Factories turned out weapons. Shareholders collected dividends. The link between money and power grew tighter. War was no longer just a tragedy to endure. It was an economic engine. And while the guns thundered, another silent revolution was happening in finance: the end of the gold standard. During the war, the United States suspended the free convertibility of gold to protect its reserves. The dollar was already on its way to becoming something new. Not just a claim on gold, but a claim backed by the power of the American state, its industrial output and military might. After 1944, with the Bretton Woods Agreement, this became official. The dollar was crowned as the world's reserve currency. Wars that destroyed Europe enriched and empowered the United States. Every bond sold, every loan issued, every factory repurposed, It all laid the foundation for America to emerge not only as a victor on the battlefield, but as the financial center of the modern world. The war machine was not just military, it was economic. And the story didn't stop in 1945. The Cold War that followed became, in many ways, a financial war as much as a political one. Military spending surged. Entire industries like aerospace, electronics, and oil were funded by defense budgets that never stopped growing. Economists called it military Keynesianism, the idea that government spending on war could keep the economy humming, avoiding depression. What started as an emergency measure became a permanent strategy. America turned war into not just an opportunity, but a structural feature of its financial system. And here's the hidden truth. Once you build a system where war spending fuels profits, there's always an incentive for more conflict. Defense contractors thrive. Banks thrive. Politicians thrive. Ordinary citizens? They carry the cost through inflation, taxation, and debt. By the time the Vietnam War began in the 1960s, the formula was fully embedded. Military conflict was no longer seen just as a political or ideological struggle. It had become an economic lever. Vietnam cost the United States more than $100 billion, a staggering figure at the time. Yet despite the human toll and eventual military failure, the financial gears kept turning. Defense contractors supplied helicopters, planes, weapons, and napalm at guaranteed prices. Banks financed deficits through the bond market. Ordinary Americans once again shouldered the burden through higher taxes and inflation. Inflation during the late 1960s and 1970s was one of the clearest signs of how war spending distorts an economy. President Johnson had promised both guns and butter, the Vietnam War abroad and the Great Society at home. But reality was brutal. Deficit spending flooded the system and the dollar's tie to gold snapped. In 1971, Richard Nixon officially ended the gold standard, declaring foreign governments could no longer redeem dollars for gold. It was a historic break. The dollar became a fiat currency, backed not by metal, but by trust in the American government. And crucially, by its unmatched military and economic power. Vietnam didn't just change geopolitics, it transformed money itself. Then came the oil shocks of the 1970s, again financial strategy intertwined with war and resource control. The creation of the petrodollar system, where oil was priced exclusively in US dollars, ensured America's currency remained indispensable worldwide. Military presence in the Middle East guaranteed that system would hold. Money and war were no longer separate. They were one and the same. Fast forward to 1991 and the Gulf War. Iraq's invasion of Kuwait threatened not just regional stability, but global oil markets. America's response was swift. The war itself was brief, but the financial gains for defense industries and oil-linked corporations were enormous. The war was broadcast live on television, and so were the profits. Military tech companies showcased their precision-guided weapons, instantly boosting stock prices. For many corporations, war had become both a proving ground and a marketing campaign. Then came September 11th and the subsequent war on terror. The financialization of conflict reached unprecedented levels. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq cost the United States an estimated $6 trillion, including long-term care for veterans and interest on the debt. That number is so staggering it almost becomes abstract. But consider this. That debt alone could have funded free college for generations, rebuilt infrastructure, or transformed healthcare. Instead, it fed into a cycle where defense contractors like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Halliburton became household names, not for civilian progress, but for supplying endless wars. And the financing method. Same playbook, bonds issued. Federal Reserve kept interest rates low. Ordinary taxpayers carried the load through ballooning deficits. Wars justified as protecting freedom or spreading democracy doubled as pipelines of money and power for financial and corporate elites. Here's the irony. America rarely wins these wars in the traditional sense. Vietnam ended in withdrawal. Iraq descended into chaos. Afghanistan was abandoned after 2 decades. But financially, the wars never failed. Contracts were fulfilled. Loans repaid. Interest kept accruing. War became profitable regardless of the outcome. For those at the top, endless conflict wasn't a problem. It was a business model. Now look at today. The military-industrial complex Eisenhower warned about in 1961 has become inseparable from the American financial system itself. Defense spending remains one of the largest parts of the federal budget, over $800 billion a year. Entire industries, entire regions depend on it. Wall Street profits from financing it. Politicians secure votes by protecting it, and the cycle repeats endlessly. What does this mean for you? The money in your pocket, the inflation at the grocery store, the taxes taken from your paycheck, they're all tied to a system that has normalized war as a permanent background condition. Whether bombs are dropping or not, the machinery is always running. The financial education most people never get is that wars aren't just fought on the battlefield. They're fought in your wallet, in your cost of living, in the erosion of your financial freedom. Think about the 2008 financial collapse. Not caused by war, but the playbook looked eerily familiar. Government bailouts, corporate profits protected, ordinary citizens left holding the bag. During the pandemic, trillions were issued in stimulus and relief. Most of it flowed straight into financial markets and corporations, rather than the working population. Mechanisms perfected in wartime, deficit financing, bond issuance, corporate guarantees, now apply in peace too. The war machine has merged with the financial system. And the most unsettling truth? Conflict and crisis aren't anomalies, they're features. Opportunities exist for those who understand debt, currency, and resources. For everyone else, they're traps. Inflation erodes savings, bubbles burst, debt chains tighten. The financial system thrives on volatility, because volatility creates dependency, and dependency ensures control. So what's the lesson? It's not just that war is bad or governments are corrupt. Those are obvious. The deeper lesson is that money and power are inseparable. Every major conflict in modern history has been as much about financial opportunity as ideology. Understanding this gives you a clearer lens on the world. When you hear calls for intervention, see defense budgets rise, or notice your cost of living creeping higher, ask not just who the enemy is, but who is profiting. This is what real financial education means. Not just budgeting, investing, or saving. It's seeing how the system is designed, who it serves, and how history repeats itself. Economic history isn't just numbers in a textbook. It's about lives, sacrifices, empires rising and falling, and the hidden architecture of debt and profit shaping every headline you read today. Next time someone tells you war is about honor, democracy, or freedom, remember, it's also about balance sheets, interest payments, and corporate profits. History doesn't repeat, but the financial system ensures it rhymes, and you keep paying the bill. If you want real wealth, true financial freedom, you need to see past slogans and propaganda. Understand the machinery of money and power for what it is, because if you don't, it will crush you anyway. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers.